All right, so thanks for joining us today for the ArcGIS Solutions for Agriculture webinar. My name is Nikki Golding. I work on the solutions team. I'll be helping facilitate the call today. Just so you're all aware, you're all presently muted. There is a Q&A panel at the bottom of the Zoom meeting. We encourage you to please input your questions into that panel, and we'll have explicit times throughout the call to address those questions. This meeting is also being recorded, so once we're done with the meeting, we'll send the link to the recording out to each of you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Bialish to take it away. Mike?
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the ArcGIS Solutions for Agriculture webinar. We're really happy that you can join us today as we review some recent developments in the agricultural space that not only are we very excited about, but help to support a common workflow that we are seeing with state agricultural departments across the United States. So again, my name is Michael Bialish, and I am a National Account Manager with Esri's state government team, and I focus on environment and natural resource agencies, including agricultural departments. I'm also joined today by Jessica Nooner, who is a solution engineer with the Esri Solutions team, and has been centrally involved with the solutions development that you're going to see today. I'm also joined by Glenn Gardner, who is a distributed computer systems specialist for GIS with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services in their Division of Plant Industry, who also helped with the solutions. Our contact info is at the end, the story map up on the screen here, and we do have our contact information at the end of that. So what we're going to do today is take you through a demonstration of our new solutions, which are focused on workflows related to agricultural pests and invasives, including detection, inspections and surveys, monitoring, response, and reporting, mainly through the Cooperative Agricultural Pest Survey, or CAPS, Farm Bill, and other programs. The solutions that you'll see today have been designed and developed through working closely with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. And as I mentioned, Glenn is on the webinar, and he'll speak more about this in a couple of minutes as far as how that worked. But working with them, and as we have found with working with other state agricultural departments across the United States, we're seeing pretty similar challenges and needs that we really feel that these solutions can help fulfill. So a little bit more about those challenges and needs. In particular, some of those that we're seeing that have been shared with us include the need to streamline field data collection. We're seeing a wide variety of data collection methods related to pest and invasive surveys, much of which is not standardized, which not only is a challenge in terms of efficiently collecting data, but also integrating that data back into centralized GIS systems for tracking, analysis, and reporting purposes. Many departments use paper-based workflows, as we've seen, or use a combination of GPS and paper, or use a variety of other data capture technologies that are not part of the ArcGIS platform, but this is ultimately where departments need their data to reside for the many purposes that I mentioned earlier. Continuing on the challenges and needs, the inability or difficulty in tracking or monitoring data collection and survey efforts. We're seeing a lot of need to do this as real-time as possible in terms of tracking progress relative to program goals. So you may have so many inspections or surveys that need to be completed in a year, a goal number, and tracking how you're doing relative to that goal, as well as quick assessments of what the inspections or surveys are actually telling you based on the data that's being collected. Continuing on, the analysis of data and increasing the analysis of data, largely due to so much time being spent on data collection and transformation and having so many data sources to work with. This often leads to challenges when reacting to and assessing potential impacts of pests when they are detected, as well as analysis relative to longer-term trends. So, taking a step back and looking at what all this data and information is telling you overall. Reporting and streamlined reporting. Many departments are challenged, or really all state departments are challenged with reporting to NAPIS, the National Agricultural Pest Information System database. And the APHIS program makes it as easy as possible in providing spreadsheet templates for this reporting, but getting the information collected using a lot of those data collection methods that I mentioned earlier, getting that information collected into this format can often be challenging and time-consuming. And then also interfacing with the public. Proactive communication and education with the public is something that is important to all state departments of agriculture and something that can be enhanced with GIS-centric tools. Whether it's simply education on what agricultural programs are doing and their impact that they're having, or keeping the public informed during times of positive pest detection. These are all important public engagement kinds of things. All right, so getting into how we're addressing these challenges and needs. The capabilities of the ArcGIS platform allow you to address these needs and challenges that I mentioned and many more. ArcGIS is a complete and integrated GIS system that helps you to connect your department together with a common operating picture. This common operating picture consists of desktop, mobile, and server or cloud-based tools that allow you to deal with workflows in a consistent and standardized way, and at the same time enable staff at all levels within your organization with GIS-based tools. When approached this way, users of the platform truly see the highest return on investment in the technology. Taking this a step further, what we do with solutions is configure the platform around specific business needs and workflows. In this case, what we're talking about today are solutions for pests and invasives within agricultural departments. So the example here, state agricultural departments have similar workflows across the country. What Esri has found is that there is no reason for each agency to recreate applications, sometimes at a costly expense, when all have similar requirements. To help our users quickly meet their business objectives and needs, Esri has worked with state agricultural customers to identify their requirements and provide the solutions as part of the ArcGIS platform. These applications, which Jessica will show today, are all included with the ArcGIS platform at no additional cost and are supported through Esri technical support. The code for the applications is also available off of GitHub. For any developers that would like to make modifications. Today we're of course focused on our newly released agriculture solutions, but they are part of a family of over 150 solutions that address workflows and needs in all levels of government and in many different industry sectors. Also, I mentioned the word configure earlier, and this is one of the many advantages of taking this approach is that it is fully supported as the platform continues to advance. Okay, so getting more specific now, and excuse me here. So what we're looking at here actually is the web page, and Jess will show this a little bit more in a little bit, but this is the web page where you access the agriculture solutions. So through the approach that I mentioned a little bit ago, we've been able to configure the maps and apps of the platform to focus them on the needs of agriculture, pests, and invasive related workflows. This includes whether setting up new monitoring sites, conducting site inspections, tracking the progress of inspection activities, monitoring the results of surveys for key performance indicators, or conducting an assessment when a critical pest is found. So at the same time, leveraging these solutions for all these activities, this location-based information is readily being captured and stored in your enterprise GIS system, allowing you to leverage this as a system of record for near real-time reporting, analysis, and decision-making. Overall, this means a streamlined and efficient data collection, easier and reliable access to authoritative information, enablement of more staff within an organization at all levels, and a basis to readily respond to events as they happen and convey this information to staff partners and the public. So as I mentioned, we have worked with state agricultural departments across the United States for many, many years now and have had a focus on pest and invasives related workflows. The challenges and needs that I mentioned earlier are being seen in various capacities across most agricultural departments, and we feel the solutions that you'll see today can help minimize these challenges and provide significant benefit. Okay, so as I mentioned, we worked with our friends from the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services in order to develop the solutions that were actually initially deployed in December. And Glenn Gardner is on this webinar, and he's going to now talk to you about his programs a little more. including their current situation and challenges that they're seeing in Florida and how they worked with us to get these solutions developed. So Glenn, go ahead and take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Pull this up. So my name is Glenn Garner. I'm the GIS specialist for the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services here in Florida. I'm under the Division of Plant Industry, which is responsible for all the pest detection in the state of Florida. I'm specifically tied to the Florida Department, the CAPS program in the state of Florida. I work directly under the state survey coordinator here as their GIS analyst for the program. In Florida, we have a very large program. We have the state survey coordinator, we have 2 state plant survey specialists, 3 USDA plant survey specialists, 2 identifiers, 1 USDA, 1 part of the division, and information specialists, along with several other environmental and biological scientists that work on our farm bill programs. We cover the whole entire state from the Keys all the way to the Panhandle. It's a very large area coverage, and we have it broken down into zones so we can cover that area. Agriculture in Florida is very significant. As you can see here, if you see my screen, is in 2010, cash receipts for the 6 major commodity products was $6.4 billion. So it's a significant industry in our Florida. And the exotic pests was the impact of exotic pests as calculated in 2005 was 1.2 billion, an impact of 22% in economic losses. So the state takes exotic pests very seriously, and we do a lot of work over the monitoring and mediating what we can. As far as how we do that, we pull a lot of records from a lot of surveying and a lot of samples out there. An average of 2.5 records per month of whether it be a state, U.S., continental hemisphere, or new to science records of either entomological, pathological, or nematological identifications. So with this past year, we've had 28 entomology records, 4 pathology, and 2 nematology records. So our diagnostic side is very busy identifying these things, in our survey side, which is under our coordination, is actually very busy collecting these samples out there in the field. Like any standard CAPS program, we have our approved work plan, and we're fully deploying this app to work with this 2018 work plan for this year. So we're going to be working on an exotic wood boring beetle, corn commodity, mollusk survey, and nursery survey for this year here in Florida under the CAPS program. Our exotic wood boring beetle survey is 21 sites within or near our international ports, whether it be airport or ship ports. We have both here. We got 4, and then an additional 40 linear and funnel traps statewide that are monitored constantly throughout the year. We also have the ability to additionally put up any prism or funnel traps as we see when appropriate. Under our corn commodity, we're going to have 20 sites that are going to be pheromone-based baited traps with our bucket or wing, and additional visual surveys. Those sites are monitored every 2 weeks, and so there'll be collections every 2 weeks at those sites. Our mollusk survey is going to be 20 sites for visual inspection of mollusks, and particularly here in Florida, we have currently the giant African land snail down in South Florida, which we have a separate program going for, but we want as CAPS, we're going to be monitoring outside of that area this year to make sure we didn't miss any spread from that eradication program that's going on. And our nursery survey is kind of fills in the blanks in different areas that are of interest to the state for pests. And we're going to be 50 high-risk sites with 1 or 2 types per site. How we use our GIS data and actually our informational data though in our collection of surveys is to assess pest risks. We have our requirements for reporting our survey activity to NAPIS in our annual reports that have to go out. We use our data for planning future surveys based off past surveys. We actually get into some demographical analysis to see what's out there population-wise for import and movement, and also the demographics of the land use area. And almost every agricultural emergency program here in Florida, CAPS is involved with in some sort of fashion. And we usually have at least one emergency program a year, sometimes two. We get lots of stuff introduced. So, with working with Esri, development with this agricultural solution originally started with a presentation we did at a workshop up here. I did a workshop, and in collaboration after that conference, and during that conference was Nikki and Jess, and they saw what we were doing and was very, very interested in what we're doing, because we were at the time testing their new tools of Survey 123 and Collector. And they latched onto us and helped us actually develop these things. And they met with us on several occasions, phone calls and on-site meetings here. And they clearly defined a plan of how they could help us by helping build this agricultural solution that could also help everybody else in the state that might want to use it, or in the country that want to use it. So they helped clearly define what our first goals were, which was this pest detection and monitoring, invasive. And that was our agreed phase approach. We're going to start with this and have different phases of even deploying of this solution. Originally started with just the Survey 123 form, and then it was a dashboard, and then a situational awareness map, and now a export utility script for exporting the what was entered in there directly into NAPIS. We've had several other conferences where they've before they pre-release stuff to review and have us provide feedback, not just from myself, but also the state survey coordinator and some of our plant survey specialists and our entomology bureau chief. Even as of this week, I've been on conference calls with our state sales rep in providing deployment support for the solution. And so they've been very helpful in helping us build this and configuring it and getting it out there for our field staff to use. And I'm very appreciative of working with Esri. Part of our future plans for using GIS is we're going to be moving all our spatial data into feature services, so they're all hosted and accessible through the web for everybody to see if we want to give them the permission. There is security on that, and some things are sensitive, but at least being in the web, we can choose who can see what that. And management was really pleased with seeing the dashboards and reporting apps, and hopefully we'll increase those and expand those to for management's purposes to see what's going on in the field faster and easier than they were before. Some of that's going to require the scripts being moved and created to do some post-processing or pre-processing, and we're working on that, and hopefully to continue working with Esri on additional expansions of the agricultural solution. And also, we're slowly moving out of the ArcMap workflow program into an ArcGIS Pro, an online workflow program. So that's all I have.
That was great, Glenn. Thanks very much for sharing your story with this group. Now you're hearing Jess Nooner, and I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about the outcomes of the work that we did with Glenn and the group down in Florida. So this, the slide that let me just pause and ask you guys to share your questions if you have questions for Glenn or Mike, or if you have questions that pop up for you as you watch the content I'm about to share. I just encourage you to put them into the chat box or into the Q&A panel, and we'll do our best to address them as we move forward through the rest of the presentation. And okay, so then let's get started talking about what the outcomes were. So Glenn gave you guys a really good introduction into the areas that we focused on with them. And what I'd like to share with you today are those solutions. What do they actually look like? How can you use them? And ultimately, how can you go get started today with looking at these? So we have three categories that we built configurations for. The first is field surveys. So this is a survey that you can use to go out into the field and do the inspections. Then we have a group for monitoring the program goals, so what the work that you're doing, how is it meeting program goals, and then reporting up to the NAPAS database. And lastly, some tools that you can use to analyze the area around a monitoring site if you suspect a pest may have established. So let's just jump right into it. The first thing I'd like to show you guys is the surveys. So what we're looking at now is Survey 123 for ArcGIS, and we've built 2 survey forms, and both of these forms are working off the same feature layer, but they have different purposes. And so as an introduction, I'd like to just walk you guys through what I affectionately call the long form. So this form has all the fields exposed that you might want to capture about the site and the work that you're doing at that site. So the form includes, as I said, site information. We'll just step through this. So the first thing that you might do is identify who you are as the agency performing the inspections, the program that this monitoring site will support, and then the survey that the site will support. So here we have the list of the 2017 priority surveys that were for CAPS. So I'll just pick corn to get us started. And then we have some descriptive information about the site itself. So what's a site number? I'm sitting at my desk, so I'm gonna call this J1. The site type, whether it's a garden, a farm, a field. And again, this list comes from the NAPAS required reporting fields. So I'll just pause and mention that as we complete this form, where we might see a descriptive information like a residential garden, what we're actually storing in the database is the code that we need to send up to the NAPAS database. So one of the things that we're really trying to do with this collection of solutions is help you guys with managing your data and improving efficiencies in your processes, because we know that managing all of this information can become a bear as you build up surveys throughout the year. Okay, so then moving on. So then we've got some more information about our site. So I'll just say Jess's desk here, a street address, and then I'll jump down to the state. So here I'm going to pick our state, and we can start to see that some of the utility built into the form. So once I identify the state I'm in, then my county list updates to only the counties that are in this particular state. Again, storing the code for San Bernardino County in the record for the site for me. One of the things that we found working with Glenn is that it's really good to store contact information about the site with the record, so that as your field staff are in the field, if they need to contact the owner or the manager, then they can reach out to that person if they have an issue while they're on site. So I can enter in my phone number here, 2853, and I can add additional contacts if necessary. So if you have more than one site contact, then you can enter in all of those that are relevant for the work that you're doing. And since I'm in Survey 123, and this is an app that is location aware, we can see that it automatically figures out where I'm at. But we know that you may not be entering these sites in the field, especially if you're determining where you're going to monitor at the beginning of a season. So you might want to punch in all of your monitoring sites back in the office and then just enable your staff to go and do the inspections. So you can modify this either just by panning the map or by simply entering the coordinates if you have coordinate information already. Okay, so let's see, back into our form. So the next section is where it starts to get interesting. So here we can identify our host plant, and I think I said this was a corn survey. So I'll enter in our host plant, and then I get a species target list. So this, again, this target list is based off of what is specified for the CAPS priorities. And this list will update depending on which survey I chose at the beginning of the question list. So I'll just pick our silver Y moth here. I have a pest status that is right on the record, so I can use this in maps, which we'll see later. And then the last bit is to identify the type of inspection that we're doing here. If it's simply a visual inspections, I don't have any more to do. I've entered all the information, but if we're doing a trap type of a survey, then I've got a little bit more information that I need to enter. So I'll enter a trap number. So I think we're at J1 site. And we've got the A trap. If I have an alternate name, then I can enter that in. Here I have an option to identify one record for multiple traps or one record per trap. So I'll leave this as one trap, and then I can enter my trap type and my lure type. And so I have to admit, maybe Glenn can help me out, the type of trap that would be used for Autographa gamma. Maybe a bucket trap?
I believe it is a bucket trap, yeah.
All right, so we have a bucket trap, and then we can choose the lure. Again, all of the options are presented in this list with codes being stored behind them. If I'm in the field, then I can say, yep, I want to log an inspection at this time, and then I get some information about what did I do in the field. So by default, the form is going to record who I am in the database. So I don't need to enter that in. It already knows me because I've logged in and it's got my information. But if I'm with a team of people, then I can identify them that, hey, I'm with the team and we're out here doing this work together. It automatically knows when the survey was performed, the date and time. I've got access to, if I'm on a connected device, then I can access the CAPS resource and collaboration approved methods to review the survey protocol if needed for this particular type of pest. And then last thing will be to identify what I did. So if this is the first visit, then I might have just installed the trap and performed a general visual observation. I'll indicate that yes, I did follow the survey protocol. If we have a crop life stage that we want to identify, I can enter that here, and then any notes. All right, and then the last bit is identifying if I took any samples today. So if I didn't take any samples, then I'm done. I can submit the form. But if I did take samples, then there are a few more questions. What method did I use to collect this sample? How many specimens did I capture? And any remarks about that are special about this particular inspection. So now I can submit the form. So I'll just thank you guys for going on that quite of a long journey with me, establishing new records in your database for where you're going to be doing your monitoring. That is the long form. But we have a couple different workflows around this particular survey to help make it a little bit easier for you as you continue working with it. So let me jump to a web map here. So one of the things that we heard in working with Glenn and his team is that a particular site, like a state park, might have many monitoring locations in it. And so we don't want to have to enter in the same information over and over again if we have multiple locations at a single site. So to address that, we want to use a feature of Survey 123 that allows us to pre-populate information in the form. So here we're looking at a web map that has all of our sites identified, and we can click on one, see its site information, and say we want to identify another monitoring location at this site. We can open up that same form in Survey 123, but have site information already populated for us. So we'll give it a chance to open up here. And what you'll see when we look at this form a little bit more closely is that key details about the site number, the address, the location name, and any other attributes that we choose to can be automatically populated in this form so that all that site information doesn't have to be manually entered multiple times potentially. The other workflow that we wanted to enable for the surveys is like a quick form. So if we've got the site information already and we're making a return visit, then we really want our inspectors to be able to get in and out of that form quickly. So for this, we have a site visit form again, it's working off the same service that supports the long form. But here we're going to use an inbox capability within Survey 123. So this allows us to get access to all of our existing sites for the purpose of just adding in a new inspection entry. So we can search this by site ID or site number. And we can also pre-filter this list so that it's filtered to only the sites that we're interested in visiting that day, or only the sites that I might be responsible for as a field inspector. So once I've found my site, you can see that we have an abbreviated form. Some key information is presented first, like what's the species that we're monitoring for at this location and what type of inspection is being performed. You can see I have a couple groups of information that's like hidden by default. So if I need to get at information about like the site contacts, then they're available to me, but they're not presented in the form automatically. Same with the trap information. If for some reason we need to change the type of trap or the lure, we can do that still. But the main purpose of this form is really to get at the site visit. So here we can quickly review the site, the target species, and then get right to recording a visit for this day. So again, I can say, who are my surveyors? What was the action that was taken? So in this case, we might be choosing general trapping procedure. Yes, I did follow the protocol. Nothing special. So right now I can just send in that inspection record and move on to the next location that needs to be looked at for the day. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause and see if there are any questions about the surveys before I move on.
So Jess, there was a question that came in. Somebody is wondering if there's how they can take this survey and maybe add additional things to it and make it, more comprehensive. Should they have a need to do that?
Sure.
How would you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with the solution, we provide all the forms that are used to define the surveys. So you can use Survey 123 Connect to enhance the forms to address the needs in your specific organization. And so that's a really great question, and we can include some more details in our follow-up content for that. But yeah, the one thing that all of the work that we do in the solutions team, and we make it a priority, is to ensure that what we deliver is configurable so that you aren't locked into what's exactly there.
I have one more question if you have time for it, Jess.
Yeah, sure.
Can we add multiple pests to a single site?
That's a great question. So the way the form is designed now, we don't have it configured that way, but it would be something that you could do. Yes. And we can think about, maybe think about taking that back as an enhancement too for the solution.
If I make a comment
Okay.
on that. There's a reason we didn't do that, is because of the NAPIX reporting requirements, that you could only report as per pest to the NAPIS, so you can't really tell NAPIS. You look at everything on a single export to keep it simpler for our exporting routine. It was just one pest per site per visit.
Yeah, that's true. We did. Yep.
We did consider that originally, though.
Yeah. So maybe it's something we need to look at again. And yeah, so we'll think about that as we move forward with the solution for sure. Okay, so then the next collection of maps and apps that we've built for invasive pest monitoring is the monitoring piece and reporting. And so for monitoring, we have the invasive pest status viewer. And with this application, we can get an overview of how the activities are going for our monitoring operations. When we first open this application, we can see a map of all of our sites, and they're symbolized by their pest status. We also have a list view on the left that reflects that same information so that we can actually expand these categories and see, okay, well, what's going on with this one site that has a suspected pest? When I click on it in the map, it'll show me again where it is and then open the pop-up so we can see that this is a site monitoring for that silver Y moth. And within this pop-up, we can get at that site contact and site inspection information. So if I click on this, it'll bring up all the inspection records for this site, and I can click on these and see what was reported by the inspector that day. And we can see in this case that samples were taken, and probably that's what moved it over to a suspected pest. We think there might be something going on here. Okay, so the other thing that we can get from this application is some information about the number of sites that we have that are active, and then also the number of visits. So what we understand from Glenn is that when you participate in the CAPS program, you have specific goals that you're trying to meet for number of sites and number of site visits. And so using a couple widgets, we wanted to present that information right in an easy to access way. So we see the number of monitoring locations on the left and our number of site visits on the right. And this is presented in a gauge widget. So if we might be looking to make 250 site visits this year, we'll note that this gauge will tick up as we get more inspections being made. And we can filter our site data to show only active sites or only sites that are looking for a specific species. So if we wanted to look for that silver Y moth sites, we can filter for just for sites monitoring that particular species, and we can see we've got 47 sites for that. And the other element for status and reporting is the reporting piece. So Glenn alluded to this, that we wanted to support you guys in getting the data out of the survey and into a format that can be used for reporting up to the NAPIS database. And just as a quick introduction, what we're looking at here is ArcGIS Pro. This is the new desktop application that comes with ArcGIS. And this particular project is what you'll get when you get the solution along with the sample data. I'll mention now that all the data that you're seeing here is sample data that we've made up just for the purposes of demonstration. And included in this project is a task. And so tasks are a way for Pro to essentially share a workflow. So if you have I'm sure you guys all have standard operating procedures. You can use a task to put that standard operating procedure into a workflow that someone could follow. And so what I've got here is actually our survey data in a web map for today's demonstration. We click over to the source tab. We can see that, oh man, let's see. There we go. We can see this is coming from our service. And so what I want to do is just give you guys a quick overview of this NAPIS reporting workflow. So I'll start this task. And the first step is just to help us get prepared, get our data into the project. And then the next step is the main step, the part that will help us get our data out of that service and into a local table that we can use. And so this tool has a few inputs. The first input is our locations. So I choose my site locations and I can filter these. So similar to what we saw in the status dashboard, I can say only give me sites that are monitoring for that particular pest, that moth. CFA, there we go. Add that filter in. And then the second input is our site inspections. So I want to select my inspections table from the service. And again, I'll filter this, but in this case, I want to filter just for surveys that happened in 2017. And then the last step is to give our table a name. So we'll say 2017. I realize there are a bunch of moths, but for brevity, we'll get this running. So this takes about a minute to run. And what it's doing is it's getting our site location data and then our inspection records and essentially merging them or putting them into one flat record, one flat table, pardon me. And you know, I was thinking I would have one staged here, and I wish I would have had it staged for you guys. But this is creating that table with that'll be flattened for us, and then we'll see it tick over to appending data.
So Jess, I have a question.
Oh, great.
What is the format? What's the output format that you're creating?
So right now what we're creating is a table in a geodatabase. And the goal of this workflow is to get us into a format that we can actually use to upload to NAPIS. So the workflow that we're in the middle of is going to guide us through getting the geodatabase table exported to Excel that then we can use to save as CSV.
Okay, so ultimately once it's done running, you end up with a CSV or you end up with a spreadsheet that you then convert to CSV?
Ultimately, you end up with a spreadsheet that will convert to CSV. Yep.
And that's the format that NAPIS accepts?
That's my understanding, yep. That NAPIS wants a
Okay.
CSV. Yep. And so what we'll do as this workflow unfolds is actually get the geodatabase table into that format that's required. So the other things that this tool is doing for us is creating that observation date. So one thing that we noticed is that the observation date for NAPIS needs to be in year, month, day in a string, not an actual date format. So we do that conversion for you guys. We also get an observation number started. We understand that needs to be unique. So we get it started for you guys. Okay, so then the next step is making a copy of a template table. So we provide a geodatabase table, again, that is in the format that we understand NAPIS is looking for. And so I'll just copy this template and we'll call it Moth 2017 NAPIS. Again, this is just making a copy of that template, and then we'll use that to load our data into. So now we'll take our exported data, transform it into that NAPIS schema. So here we can see now we can start to see that taking shape with observation number, survey date, agency, etc. There are a few fields that aren't captured in the survey, so you'll see these not getting mapped. We'll run this. And then I just want to open this up for you guys so you can see what that's starting to look like. The observation number, our observation date, and then all that coded data that we're capturing in the survey. So this is where you can really start to see that even though as we're interacting with the information in apps and through the form, it's human readable, once we get it exported, it's showing up in this coded format. And then our last step, as Nikki was mentioning, is to export this table to CSV, to an Excel format, and I'll show you guys what that looks like also. Pop this open. So now I'm just waiting for Excel to open over here. There are a few things that you'll want to do before finally doing a save to CSV. The first one is to delete the object ID field. This is just an artifact from the export. And then do a review, essentially a quality control review on this data before uploading, which I'm sure you guys would all be doing. But you can see what this looks like as the export from the system. All right, so that's the NAPIS reporting piece. Any questions before I move on to the situational awareness element?
That's a good question.
Jess, this is Glenn. I have Leroy Wilby here, who's our state survey coordinator here for Florida right now, and our bureau chief. You wanted to ask a question on the sites visit on the dial. Can you change that by the year? And I believe that's working now, right?
Yeah, so we can look at previous years, and in this case, I'm just showing a count for previous year data. Yep.
Well, exactly too. What I wanted to do is use it as a tool. For example, I want to see if not just the number of sites that they're going to hit those targets, but I want to see a comparison to where we're in that period of observation, like at the time. So can we overlay that so that we can see that together, not just the year?
Yeah, I think that there is a way that we could do that. So essentially showing kind of like a chart of activity over the year, how many surveys in each month might have been completed, for example.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is something that you could do with a chart type of a widget. And yeah,
that's where we can use it as a tool to kind of advise our staff in the field, and they can also use it to gauge where they're at and where they need to increase in activity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, so then the last element that I want to show you guys is the invasive pest viewer. So this is a web app builder configuration that we have built to help you guys with understanding who and what is within proximity of a location that's suspected to have an infestation. So we can see that pesky little yellow dot still here. So if I click on it, again, we can see all of the information about this site and even the site inspection records. But what I'd like to do is to use this location as input for a tool that will help me analyze what's going on around this site. So if I set the location and then I'll give it a buffer of 15 miles, and we can see that the tabs in this tool have now been populated with some information that we can use. The first bit of information are additional monitoring sites around this location that we could use to amp up our monitoring for a particular pest. We also have information about land use and crops, which might help us identify places that are at risk of propagation should the pest start to spread. Another data element that we heard was important were nurseries and stock dealers. So I think, again, this helps us understand maybe where a pest might have come from or where it has a potential to spread to if we're not able to contain it, should it be confirmed. Again, same idea with state parks. This could be a risk or a resource to us for additional monitoring. The other aspect that we're providing within a tool like this is some information about the people. So how many households do we have in this area? What's the total population? We could expand this tab to include other demographic information about religion or ethnicity if we felt like it was important for understanding how this infestation may have gotten started. We also have some information about people who have registered with the state as being chemically sensitive. So if we do need to do some sort of treatment, then we might need to do proactive notification with these folks or even use this as input into our plans for treatment. And the last element are public safety resources. So if we're going to be out there doing increased monitoring, we might want to alert the sheriff's office that we're going to be tromping around people's yards and they can expect some calls. And then knowing where hospitals or other health medical resources are could be handy. So once I've got this data analyzed, I can do a couple things. The first is I can download CSVs of all of this information just with a one click. So if I need to contact the people or I want to give lists to other stakeholders, I can download these CSVs. And now we see them all downloading. I'll just click save on this. The other thing I can do is I can print a report. So I may want to share all of this information just in a well-formatted format. So if I say suspected pest report, I can enter some notes about what I already know about this location, and I'll just say okay. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me a document that I can save to PDF or print to a printer that has all that information that we saw in the tabs available. So our existing monitoring locations, the information about the crops and land use, our nurseries and stock dealers. This report is pretty lengthy once everything gets entered into it. And we also include a map to help orientate others that might be referencing this. So this is a great tool to just help with increased awareness about who and what is in proximity to this area of interest.
Hey, Jess. Yeah. Real quick, we have about 10 minutes left. I have a couple questions. Okay. The first question is, how is the geodata for land use, crops, demographics, et cetera, entered into the system? That's a great question. So in this case, this would be data that we would expect your organization to have in some form or fashion. What we found with Florida is that they had their land use and crop data shared in map services already. And so as we were building out the solutions, we could pull those map services into the application and just use them directly. If you don't already have the data published, then you could share it into a hosted service in ArcGIS Online in your organization for use in an app like this. Demographics is another case where you may already have data within the state that you could leverage in an application like this. What we did for this application was we took tiger data for census blocks, I think, and we used Esri's demographics to geo-enrich those polygons. So we went and got the latest demographic data, essentially appended it onto these existing shapes, and then we're using that in this viewer. Okay, so one point of clarity, Jess, regarding where the data can live. The data and the services can live within our cloud, which we call ArcGIS Online, or they can live on the customer server as well. So I just want to make it clear that it doesn't have to be hosted. Yep, that's true. Okay, that's it for now. Okay, great. So as Nikki mentioned, we are getting towards the end of our time. So I want to briefly help you guys find this stuff if you want to go look for it and get your hands on it. You'll want to go to solutions.arcgis.com, and when you first access the page, if you haven't been here before, this is what it looks like. You'll see a state government category. You can click on that, and agriculture will be front and center. And from here, you'll see little vignettes about everything we looked at today. And as you go into each of these categories, you'll get access to the download, which includes sample data. In the case of invasive pest surveys, it also includes that workflow for doing the NAPAS reporting. All of the content also includes step-by-step instructions for getting started. So how to publish data. If you've never published a service before, we give you instructions on how to do that, how to create the map, even workflows for using those surveys and following the NAPAS reporting. We've got some detailed instructions on what is all involved there. We've also got a kind of a shortcut for getting services published and getting the apps configured through the ArcGIS Solutions deployment tool. And I'll just quickly point that out. It's an ArcGIS Pro add-in. After you install it, it shows up on your Share tab. And if I just crack this guy open, if you go under the Deploy in ArcGIS Solutions step, and right now what it's doing is it's loading all the configurations that are available. You can search for invasive and find this whole collection that we looked at today. And when you deploy these, what it's going to do is it's going to publish the services for you, create web maps complete with the symbology and the pop-up configurations,
and also configure the applications. So they'll all be published into your organization or your portal for ArcGIS, and ready for you to go into the field right away if you wanted to just use our default configurations. Okay, so if there aren't any more questions, I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Okay. All right, thanks, Jess, for a really great demonstration and overall description and context. And thanks, everybody attending, for your questions. They're really, really good questions, and give us some other things to think about as we move forward. Hopefully, as you saw, the solutions address the aspects of each of the challenges that I spoke about in the beginning. Relative to things like streamlined data collection, monitoring of inspection activities, response and analysis when a pest is detected, and streamlining reporting. As we discussed, we worked with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to determine the application requirements, and we've also received feedback from several other state agricultural departments. We have and will continue to leverage this feedback to enhance the solutions over time while providing support on their implementation and use. And actually, some of the questions that you asked today will certainly go into that feedback loop, and be considerations for enhancements to the solutions as we move forward. With that said, though, we do understand that you have existing methods and processes for pest and invasive surveys and monitoring with many people and processes, of course, involved. Myself and your state account managers are available to work with you to understand how the applications may complement and enhance your processes today, whether being a couple of applications or the full suite of solutions. So while those solutions were developed to be used together in deployment, we do recognize that they may be phased in, or only certain applications might be needed right away. For example, maybe you just need a good operations dashboard right now, or maybe you want to start with the field data collection applications themselves. This is all certainly possible, and something, again, that we can not only help you with, but help you plan for the overall implementation in a way and in an approach that makes the most sense for you. So please follow up with me, anybody else on the call, or with your state account manager for more information. And again, as we get to the end of the webinar here, I'll have our contact information up on the screen. I am using a story map through this, my portions of the presentation, and we're also going to make that available because not only does it include the context for what we talked about and some links, but also there's some use cases, ArcGIS for agriculture use cases here, some state-by-state examples, so you can click on the states and get more information, and there's a link to more information as well. We also have some story maps and things like that of how ArcGIS is being applied to agriculture. So with that, we're just about at the end of the formal portion of the webinar. Again, we really hope you found this useful and can see how you can quickly stand up solutions to truly support the business needs of your pest and invasives inventory and all the monitoring, response, and reporting pieces of the workflows that go along with that. With the inspection field seasons coming into full swing for many of you over the next couple of months, it's certainly very possible to get these stood up for your programs, and we hope you will consider doing that. Also, just a reminder, the webinar has been recorded. It's still being recorded, and we will share this recording with all of you that have attended today soon, which you can then share with others in your organization or maybe other partners that you work with, and so on. And as I mentioned, we'll also share the story map at the same time for the context, and so you have access to these use cases and things like that. So here's our contact information at the bottom. And we do have some time to address maybe a couple more questions, but before we do that, I'm going to turn it back over to Nikki, who I think wanted to make a couple of other comments.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I just wanted to thank the team at Florida for partnering with us. So Leroy, Glenn, and Sarah, thanks to you all for locking arms with us, or as Glenn, as you said, latching on with us to help build the solution together. I think it's a awesome testament to really understanding the business needs of the broader community. And, you know, I think you guys in partnership with us have really helped advance this workflow for the entire community. And I just wanted to thank you for investing in that with us.
Okay, so
and at this point,
go ahead.
Thank you, Nikki.
I was just going to say, sure thing. We don't have any additional questions at this point, Mike.
Okay. All right. Well, with that then, thank you again for participating today. And as we said, we'll follow up with some information, story map, and so on that I talked about in the recording of the webinar for everyone. Thank you very much. And I echo what Nikki said as well for the appreciation that we have for the folks down in Florida for helping with this and providing valuable insight. So thank you.